Before my father died, he entrusted me to Evan. Evan was the senior I had a crush on for 5 whole years, and also my father's most proud student. During an inspection trip they were involved in an accident. My father was injured while saving Evan and, despite efforts, died. His final wish was that Evan would take care of me. Evan broke up with his longtime girlfriend Claire and married me after graduation. Claire was forced by her family to marry the rich second-generation heir from her hometown. She was beaten at home every few days and lived a miserable life. Now, in 3 months our marriage will be 3 years old, and Evan and I are still cold and distant. When our childhood friend Luke learned I liked Evan, he turned around and left for abroad. Later, he started calling me more and more frequently. Ashley, you only have 3 months left on your surgery waiting list. I was the last person to learn that Claire had been taken back to Heisher by Evan. Claire had been beaten badly by her husband, 2 of her ribs were broken. I vaguely remember overhearing their last phone call a month ago. I heard Claire crying miserably on the line. Claire, don't cry. Take your time and tell me what's wrong, I'll help you fix it. Evan went into the study. Even though he kept lowering his voice, I could still hear the flood of tenderness in it. A month from today, I went to the hospital to pick up medicine and happened to see Evan, usually so busy he was never around, bringing Claire in for a checkup. He was holding her backpack and the examination forms while offering her a cup to drink from. The way he looked at her was the same as before, full of pity. In just 2 or 3 years, Claire's spirit had been worn away by marriage. But Evan's love remained unchanged. Like a secretive voyeur, I watched from the shadows as Claire entered the exam room, watched Evan pacing anxiously outside the door, and followed them out of the hospital, where Evan tenderly fastened the passenger seat belt for her. I hailed another cab and followed them all the way to the hotel registered under Evan's name. Their mutual classmates were all waiting for their reunion, a table full of old friends exchanging affectionate greetings. Through the glass I could see Evan and Claire sitting very close, like lovers from the old days. They seemed to have both forgotten that Evan also had a wife named Ashley. At the time everyone thought Ashley had hit the jackpot, since she was able, by virtue of her father's dying wish, to brazenly claim his most outstanding protégé for herself. Evan really was outrageously talented. After graduation he decisively gave up an opportunity at a research institute and switched careers to the business world. It was a fortuitous moment of favorable policy, and with the help of connections my father once had, the business under his banner flourished, and his worth in the market rose accordingly. Yet no one knew he had a wife named Ashley. Those who knew him well, however, knew he had once had a beloved first love, Claire, who remained his eternal regret. At that time we had been married only a month, and he often came home late at night, drunk. My father had held this disciple in high regard before he died. The research institute had once been his proud conviction. So I waited until very late, trying to summon the courage to reason with him once more. I had just pushed the door open when I saw Evan burying his face in the blanket, such a big man, drunk, sobbing uncontrollably in the empty room. Claire, if I hadn't been so stubborn about my ideals, I wouldn't have lost you, right? If I'd known, why the hell would I have gone to grad school? I wouldn't have had to marry Ashley, and we wouldn't have been apart. So he gave up the research institute job simply because his ideals cost him the woman he loved. That night I didn't go in. I quietly closed the door for him. Back home by myself, I went to the study and took out a new notebook. I clenched the gel pen in my palm for a long time. Even though I took my medicine on schedule, the dull ache in my head still made it impossible for me to string today's images into a coherent sentence. Oh well, they're all unpleasant things, better to forget them. I thought for a moment and marked the time in my notebook. 3 months left, 90 days. Ashley will forget everyone, including Evan. I don't know when Evan came back tonight. He sleeps in the other bedroom. We've been sleeping apart for a long time. In the morning I heard movement, rubbed my eyes and left the bedroom, and saw Evan preparing to go out with a stack of books in his hands. I seemed to see that clean, handsome Evan from campus, looked up and asked him with an innocent smile, "Evan, are you going to the library to study again?" Evan froze for a moment, then slowly turned back. The man's ink-colored suit was elegant and crisp, his gentle, picturesque features tinged with cold. "Ashley, what game are you playing this time?" I stood there and suddenly woke up. Right, I had been married to Evan for more than 2 years. It seems Claire also returned to Heischer yesterday. Evan clearly hadn't intended to hide it from me. Claire came back to resume her postgraduate studies. I sent her the books I used before. He hurriedly shut the door and left, even neglecting that at this hour I should be heading to Haida, not staying at home. I've liked Evan for 8 years, he was dazzlingly outstanding at Haida, and even though his family was poor and his white shirts were washed again and again, nothing could hide his remarkable bearing. I still remember when he was preparing for grad school, I saw an email he had sent on my father's computer. Excited, I rushed into my father's study and praised him to the skies, begging my father to take him in. My little plan was plain as day to my father, who was also a teacher who cherished talent. Evan, as he wished, became his student. I was overjoyed, because for the next 3 years I could see Evan often. My sick leave didn't end until tomorrow, but I still went back to the department office in the afternoon, and as soon as I stepped in I heard my colleagues whispering. That's when I learned Evan had pulled some strings to arrange a dorm and classes at the university so Claire could return to High University and focus on studying for her graduate entrance exams. Some of High University's teachers knew about Evan and Claire's past relationship, and now they looked at me with a good deal of sympathy. The report awaiting approval lay on my desk. Evan had already greased all the wheels for Claire, so the report was just a formality. I knew it wouldn't amount to much, but I still picked up the pen and signed, "Not approved." Claire burst in less than half an hour later. She thumped my desk so hard, her emotions flaring. "Ashley, the dean has already agreed. Who do you think you are to not approve this?" I looked at her calmly. "Not approved because it doesn't meet the regulations." Claire called Evan right in front of me. The moment he answered, she was sobbing, her tears streaking her face. "Evan, Ashley, she rejected my application." "Evan, I just wanted to fulfill the dream you once had, why is it so hard?" "Evan, am I wrong? I shouldn't have come back to Heischer." The man on the other end of the line spoke soothingly with great effort. Claire's emotions gradually steadied, and at last she replied softly, "Okay, I'll wait here obediently for you to come over." I put down the pen in my hand and looked at Claire with a mocking smile. "Claire, your talent for sitting on 2 boats at once is as consistent as ever." Evan arrived quickly, and under his handling, all of Claire's programs bypassed me. On my way home from work I passed the student dormitory and saw him helping Claire move her things. How ironic, the person I love bustling about for his ex-girlfriend right where I work, paying me no mind at all. I stood behind Evan, watching them for a long while until he finally sensed something was off and suddenly turned, our eyes meeting. We looked at each other without a word. I smiled calmly and said, "Sorry to trouble you," then turned and left. Evan was perhaps a little surprised. That wasn't how I used to behave. After Evan and I married, Claire sulked for a while. Her antics included, but were not limited to, calling Evan in the middle of the night to cry, threatening suicide, and begging him to come see her, until I snatched Evan's phone and warned her, "Do you believe I'll tell him all about your baggage?" Claire hung up in panic. Evan, however, grew cold. "Ashley, she was just having a hard time accepting my marriage and making a scene. Why are you taking it so seriously?" I was angry and aggrieved, and I immediately told him about the time I had happened upon the rich kid escorting her back to school. Evan was silent for a long while, then left the room with a sullen face. In the middle of the night he suddenly burst into the bedroom, rifled through my drawers and pulled out a stack of diaries and his own sketches. In the dark he sneered again and again, "Ashley, is this necessary? I had no idea you'd liked me for so long. You already have me, I'm married to you. You and the teacher, why did you have to force Claire to drop out? What rich second-generation brat, how can you say such slanderous things about her? All for your ridiculous crush? You and the teacher are going to force her to quit school? How can you be so cruel? She's only a year away from graduating, and now her family is forcing her to go home and get married, her whole life is ruined." Evan snapped. his eyes were bloodshot. He bound my hands and feet, roughly tore open my nightgown. "You wanted me, didn't you? I'll give you what you want. Can you leave her alone? Ashley, are you satisfied?" My crying grew faint. In the end, with my hair in disarray, I lay on the wedding bed we had once carefully chosen, quiet and numb. The day Evan and Claire broke up, he proposed to me. He smoothed my hair and said softly, "Ashley, from now on I'll take care of you." After Dad passed away, he stayed by my side without leaving, doing his best to soothe the pain of losing my only family member. I thought I was finally lucky, that my favorite Evan had stepped in to become my family. That agonizing night ripped apart all my illusions. Evan didn't believe me. He was convinced that I had long harbored feelings for him, that I had single-mindedly tried to possess him and sully Claire's name, and he even blamed me and Dad for Claire's expulsion. I don't know exactly how Claire twisted the facts to make him believe so completely. All I know is that he doesn't believe me. From that day on, I took the initiative to sleep in a separate room. Since then, we grew cold and distant. Evan has always been very busy, almost never around, but that didn't stop his gossip from reaching my ears. Evan introduced Claire to one of the top advisors at Hayda University, took her to dinners with the institute's leaders, leaving no room and paving the way for her. To make it easier for her to review, he took her to visit each of the specialist teachers. A teacher who had once been friendly with his father treated them coldly and changed the subject. "Evan, long time no see. Ashley, when will you bring her to see me?" When Claire left, she was said to have cried in distress. Amid the coming and going of people, Evan ignored what anyone thought and held her in his arms, soothing her gently. That day Evan unusually came home early. He had specially prepared a meal and waited for me. We ate in a heavy silence, like strangers. At last Evan couldn't hold back and spoke first. "Ashley, Claire, she wants to invite you to a simple dinner tomorrow. She knows you have some misunderstandings about her. She says she won't hold past things against you and hopes you two can get along well from now on." I set the bowl down, pulled out a napkin, and methodically wiped my hands before replying, "I'm not going." Evan was silent for a few seconds, then sighed helplessly. "Ashley, please, don't make things difficult for her, okay?" I paused, ultimately said nothing, and went back to the bedroom, closing the door with a sharp slam. That night I took out my notebook. The date on the page marked 90 was over a month past. I flipped a page and wrote the word divorce in the memo section. 2 days later, Claire found me. She slapped the report onto my desk without ceremony, this time noticeably arrogant. "Just sign it, Ashley. If you won't, fine, I can go straight to the dean or Evan." I picked up the report. She was asking to be transferred to staff housing with a quieter environment on the grounds of dormitory noise, and she also requested access to my father's research materials from when he was alive. I picked up a pen, wrote "denied" once more, and tossed it back to her. Claire left with a sullen face, and before long there was a commotion outside. I went out to see what was happening, and Jamie hurried over with a sour expression to complain. "Ashley, she has the director's signed report and insists I open the records room for her, saying she needs to access your father's research. I told her the key is with you and she has to apply to you, but she wouldn't listen and called people to forcibly pick the lock." I grabbed a stool on impulse, walked to the records room door and stood there, then turned to look at the crowd gathered around. "Anyone who dares take my father's life's work, I'll smash their head in. If you don't believe me, come try." Claire stormed up to me, her face full of fury. "Ashley, don't you push people around. It was your father who tried to take Evan for himself and forced me to drop out. Who does he think he is, some venerable authority?" Slap. I delivered a heavy slap to Claire, her head turned to the side, and a red mark bloomed instantly on her pale cheek. I was so furious I could barely stand, my head buzzing. "Claire, what right do you have to talk about my father? If it weren't for you two timing, that rich heir wouldn't have called my dad and made a scene, claiming he'd come to school to ruin you and Evan." Claire shrieked, cutting me off, stumbling toward Evan who had hurried over. With tears blurring her eyes she flung herself into Evan's arms, deliberately showing the half of her face with the red handprint. Evan was first taken aback, a faint anger rising on his face. Ashley. The funding for the university's research institute came from me. I have the right to access all related materials, including my professor. I went pale. You still know he's your professor. Precisely because he's my professor, I've always been grateful that he saved me. I promised to help him look after you, and I've done that. What more do you want? I'm telling you, Ashley, you don't get to decide whether this report goes through. Claire needs the professor's research materials, and you can't stop her. Evan held Claire behind him and kept saying something, but my head was spinning and everything around seemed to have lost its sound. I collapsed to the ground and closed my eyes. Only after a long while did I hear Jamie calling my name beside me. Ashley, Ashley, are you okay? Are you all right? I stumbled to my feet in a daze, looking at the chaotic surroundings, bewildered. What happened? What's going on? Why is everyone gathered here? Jamie steadied my arm and led me back to the office, his eyes full of worry and confusion. Ashley, you don't remember what just happened? Just now? Did anything happen just now? I think I saw Evan leaving with a woman, or maybe it was just a trick of my eyes. I shook my head to cast off the jumbled thoughts and opened the computer on impulse. My political theory report isn't finished yet. But Ashley, the political theory report, you already turned that in last week. Since the last time I suddenly fainted and sat at the door of the records room, my memories have been muddled these past days. Drafting the divorce papers with Evan was something my notebook reminded me to do. Thinking it over carefully, it seemed there really weren't any jointly owned things between Evan and me worth making an agreement about. I reached for the drawer on instinct and felt around, as if something were missing. Jamie cleared his throat. Ashley, the director has asked that the records room key be handed over to someone else for safekeeping. Oh. I nodded silently. Let them hand it over, it didn't matter. At noon in the staff canteen, Claire suddenly served herself and sat down across from me. I looked up at her, my eyes blurry for a moment, and nodded toward her. Senior Claire. Claire gave a light laugh. Ashley, Evan isn't here again. What are you pretending for? Your father and you took Evan away from me back then. Who are you trying to look innocent in front of here? Evan has been with me since college. He loves me like his life depends on it. Do you really think keeping him by your side would win his heart? How does it feel, having your husband's heart somewhere else? I paused, set my spoon down, and looked at her again. Oh, it was Claire. I smiled slightly. Claire, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you. That night, the man who drove you back to school in the Mercedes, who was he? The one you called Raymond? His name seems to be the same as your current husband's. Didn't you tell Evan you were forced by your family to return home and get married? I'm a little curious, how could the husband you were later forced to marry already have known you during your romance with Evan? Claire was momentarily at a loss for words, her face flushing and paling in turns. Raymond? The gossiping teacher eavesdropping beside them couldn't help but ask, remembering that she and Claire used to share the same dormitory. Claire, didn't you say he was your cousin? He used to buy you bags and lipstick all the time? The remark instantly set everyone aglow with gossip. Come to think of it, Claire hasn't divorced her husband yet, has she? How can she be so cozy with Evan here? Who knows? Was she ever really with her husband or with Evan? Claire's eyes were rimmed in red. She sat dazed for a moment, then suddenly stood up and ran out of the cafeteria. After lunch break I passed the school playground and saw Evan, dusty from travel, having gone out of his way to bring lunch for Claire. The two sat on the steps. Evan in suit and tie looked majestic. Claire was gentle and sweet, like a bird leaning on its perch. When she looked at Evan, her eyes were full of tender attachment. I remember the first time I saw Evan in sophomore year, his white shirt spotless, his posture upright, carrying the cultivated air of a prestigious senior and the proud confidence of an outstanding student. I was captivated by him, loved him fiercely, yet never once thought to disturb him. Even when I happened upon Claire stepping down from another man's car, I didn't dare reveal a single thing in his presence. My heart ached for him, hearing such things said about him felt like a desecration, and all the more so because he was the one hurt. At that time Raymond discovered that Claire had been dating someone at school. After finding out information about Evan, he angrily called my father and threatened to come to the university, to make Evan and Claire famous across the whole campus, to let everyone see what kind of students a respected professor had produced. Raymond followed through. The complaint letter arrived at the school the next day. But Evan was innocent, he knew nothing at all and had only ever been devoted to being good to Claire. Later, to protect the future of Evan, his prized disciple, my father suppressed the complaint letter. He and Claire's advisor secretly spoke with her, telling her she either had to persuade Raymond to drop the matter or withdraw from school herself. Before long, my father had an accident while leading an inspection team. To take responsibility for me, Evan was the first to break up with Claire. Claire begged and cried in vain, and under pressure from her family and Raymond, she was forced to quit school and go marry Raymond. Only I, dazed, watched a family member die in an accident, while the person I liked suddenly told me he wanted to marry me. I stood there entranced, and as if sensing it, Evan suddenly looked up and met my eyes. Across the track of the sports field, I smiled at him from afar. He seemed momentarily stunned. There were 42 days left until our third wedding anniversary. I wrote down the things I had to do before leaving in my notebook. At the welfare home, after finishing the last sketch class, I apologetically told the children that I was ill and might not be able to continue teaching them. One of the kids asked me, "Teacher Ashley, will the sickness make you die?" I thought for a moment and told him, "Maybe I'll die, maybe I'll forget everyone." "Then will you forget all the unhappy things?" "Yes." The child clapped his hands in admiration. "So cool, that means you got a new system and get to live happily all over again." On the anniversary of my father's death, I rarely reached out to Evan. He was at a dinner and sounded a little tipsy. "Ashley, have you forgotten what day it is today?" "What's the matter? What day is it today?" On the other end of the line, I heard Claire's voice, "Evan, drink less." I hung up silently and went to the cemetery alone. Those diaries and sketch drafts from college, I tore them apart and burned them to ashes. Facing the cemetery wind, I forced a laugh. "Sorry, Dad. Soon I'm going to America for a minor operation. I might forget you, or maybe, if I don't come to see you for a long time, don't be mad at me." "Evan, he probably won't come to see you anymore. Let's just forget about him." In my mind, Evan was the kind who would repay a mentor's kindness and have boundless prospects. At that time, Evan was about to graduate and had been offered a position at a research institute. If Raymond dragged the matter into the school, his 7 years of study and the opportunity at the institute could be ruined in an instant. When my father entrusted me to him, it wasn't only because he worried about me, he also felt sympathy for his student. He hoped that by arranging a marriage between us, he could erase the effects of that love triangle on Evan and smooth his path in research. Perhaps in his eyes this was a perfect arrangement. He had sheltered his student and entrusted his daughter. Unfortunately, things turned out the opposite of what he wished. When Evan chose to give up a future at the research institute, who could say it wasn't another form of revenge for his teacher forcing Claire out? At night, I wandered like a lost soul beneath the apartment building until Evan's sudden voice startled me awake. "Ashley? Why are you out so late?" In the dim light, Evan strode toward me and took off his suit jacket to drape over my shoulders. He frowned, his voice still carrying traces of alcohol. "In weather this cold, why are you wearing just slippers?" I looked at the slippers on my feet, then stared at him in bewilderment. I only remembered closing my laptop, taking my medicine, and preparing to sleep. I didn't know how I had suddenly come downstairs. "Were you waiting for me?" Evan asked hesitantly, with a note of caution. His breath lingered around me. I didn't know how to explain, so I fell silent. Evan sighed. "Come on, let's go home." I followed behind him, suddenly remembering that he had been with Claire today. He had, over the past few years, wounded his unfinished ideals and his guilt over Claire's expulsion into an impenetrable knot in his heart, which is why he poured everything he had into trying to help her. Let Evan go, I suddenly thought. Evan neither loves you nor trusts you. Ashley, let Evan go. I finally typed a sentence into the still blank divorce agreement on the computer. No children born of the marriage, no shared property, relationship irretrievably broken, divorce by mutual consent. Evan and I lived under the same roof, yet we rarely met. We kept to our own rooms, he came home late almost every night, and I slept heavily, so that by the time I woke the next morning he was already gone. It's hard to imagine that we'd spent almost 3 years living like this. That day I opened the door and saw Evan in the living room packing a backpack, and I was somewhat surprised. He was wearing a blue and white tracksuit, stuffing a detector, a first aid kit, and the like into his pack. I stood there stunned for a few seconds, my head buzzing. I suddenly asked, Evan, are you going with Dad to do a survey? Evan froze mid-movement. He slowly turned around, his eyes deep and complicated. Ashley, what are you talking about? You mean you're going with Dad on the field trip? I tilted my head up at Evan and smiled at him. Then you two must be very careful, okay? The backpack in Evan's hand suddenly slipped and fell to the floor. He stepped forward in disbelief, grabbed my hand and asked me in a flurry, Ashley, do you know how old I am this year? I was a little puzzled. You're in your 3rd year of grad school, so you should be 25, right? Evan's face went pale in an instant. He reached out hurriedly, touching my cheek, then my head. Ashley, have you been tired lately? How could you get so forgetful? The ringtone in his hand suddenly rang. Evan was stunned for a long moment before clumsily hitting accept. Evan, I'm Claire. Evan cut her off, his voice a little panicked. I might not be able to accompany you on this survey. I prepared things for you and will deliver them shortly. Evan left in a hurry, and it sounded as if he'd added, wait for me to come back. I opened my notebook and looked at the reminders, suddenly jolting awake to the fact that I had to go to work. Evan's words were cast aside as I slung my backpack and went out the door. Walking down the street, after a moment of daze, I suddenly forgot where I was headed. By the time Evan found me, it was already late at night. It was still raining. My mind was a blank. I sat on the roadside and looked up at Evan standing before me. He held my phone in his hand, panting, his forehead wet with either sweat or rain. I asked him in surprise, Evan, have you and Dad finished your inspection? He came over trembling, struggling to hold the dripping wet me in his arms, his voice catching, it's over, Ashley. Come on, I'll take you home. Evan helped me change into pajamas and dried my hair, then wrapped his arms around me from behind. We lay in bed with our breaths intertwined. The scene felt both familiar and strange. I was a little drowsy, my eyelids drifting down now and then. Ashley, tomorrow, will you let me take you to the hospital for a checkup? I'm sorry, Ashley. I've been so focused on making it up to Claire lately that I've neglected you. Evan's voice was hazy, as if mixed with mist. Ashley. Claire dropped out, and I always feel like I owe her, so I wanted to help her. After all, I was the one who left her first, and you resented her because of me. Ashley. Evan's hand brushed my cheek. Let me finish this, then we won't owe her anything. We'll live our lives properly, okay? I'll take care of you. I'm sorry, that night, I scared you, you stopped getting close to me afterwards, and I didn't know how to apologize. I slept in a daze. Evan's lips brushed the side of my ear, the coolness making me shiver, and the lost memories came flooding back. Ashley, don't you want me? I'll give it to you right now, can't you just leave her alone? I told you, Ashley, you don't get to decide whether this report goes through. Claire needs the professor's research, there's nothing you can do to stop it. Evan's crisp breath still lingered at my nostrils as that night's carousel of scenes swept through my mind, making my throat churn. I curled up, trembling uncontrollably. Ashley. I jolted, yanking Evan away with a fierce shove. In the dark my voice was hoarse as I curled into a corner and barked at him helplessly, get out. Get the hell out of here. The air froze for a moment, then came the rustle of movement. Evan dressed and climbed out of bed, and the bedroom door clicked shut behind him. I don't know how long passed before I finally felt my way out of bed, switched on the lamp, and took out my notebook. 16 days left. It was both the third anniversary of my marriage to Evan and the last chance for my operation. I dialed Luke. Luke, take me away. Something has been growing in my head. After the examination in Heischer, I sent the results to my childhood friend Luke in the United States. After reading them, he solemnly told me the situation was not optimistic and advised me to go abroad for surgery. The operation has a 65% chance of success, and if it succeeds there's a 95% chance of memory loss. He said, Ashley, this is the only way to save your life. Even if you don't have the surgery, you will forget everyone bit by bit, and you will die. The next morning I opened the door. Evan was sitting in the living room, having not slept all night. He looked straight at me and said softly, Ashley, let's talk. I walked past him and picked up the coat on the sofa. Evan stood up, grabbed my arm, his voice hoarse, Ashley, can we please talk? I coldly pushed his hand aside, Evan, let's get a divorce. Evan froze where he stood, his face frozen, his eyes full of disbelief. You want to divorce me? No. Evan suddenly came to, I won't divorce you. Ashley, are you feeling unwell? Let me take you to the hospital, okay? No, I'm fine. I put on my shoes and smiled at him, I just don't need you to take care of me anymore. When I left the house, I turned back to him and said, remember this, neither my father nor I owe you anything, and we don't owe Claire either. I went to Hainan University first to submit my resignation, then to the Property Transactions Center to quickly liquidate the assets I held. Evan has done well in his career these past few years and earned a good income. I didn't touch the things he bought for me, only the property my father left me, the apartment Evan and I currently live in. In fact, over the years Evan bought several properties, spacious flats, suburban villas, and he'd even asked me to move into a new place with him. I refused, I'm a sentimental person. Evan isn't like me. If he sells this place, he has his own options. Heischer is where I grew up, its parks, streets, and corners all hold memories of me from childhood to now. These days I kept walking, over and over through the paths of past memories, as if reliving myself. That way, even if I were to forget everything, those former days wouldn't have been in vain. When I finally got home and opened the door to see Evan, I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was disheveled, his face haggard. When he saw me come in he seemed momentarily stunned. Then he stumbled forward, where did you go? Ashley, I've been looking for you all this time, do you have any idea how close to losing my mind I was? They said at the school that you handed in your resignation, and you weren't answering your phone. I was really about to go crazy. Ashley, let me take you to get treated, okay? We can cure you. I've made so much money these past few years. I'll take you to the United States, take you to Germany, wherever is best we'll go, I will definitely cure you. I looked quietly down at the table, where all my test results were laid out. Evan's phone had been ringing non-stop since I came in, he ignored everything else, holding my hand with anxious urgency. I stared at the name Claire blinking repeatedly on the screen and said, promptingly, answer it, it's rung so many times, there might be an emergency. Evan hesitated for a moment, then finally pressed the call button. Evan. Please, I'm begging you. Save me. Claire's helpless cries filled the room. Raymond came after me. He drove onto the school grounds to catch me. He'll kill me. I smiled at Evan. Go. Evan looked at me steadily, struggle and hesitation in his eyes. At last he spoke, Ashley, wait for me. He had just left when Luke arrived. What was left on the table in the end was a signed divorce agreement. Before boarding the plane, Luke showed me a video that had been posted in the alumni group. In the video, Claire's hair was torn and disheveled, accompanying her screams was a man's stream of curses. Bitch. After high school your family paid me $200,000 in betrothal money. You fucking knelt all night begging me to let you go study. I softened and supported you through college and then grad school. How did you repay me? In college you were sneaking around with some pretty boy behind my back, making me run around like a dog. If it weren't for Evan being protected by his teacher, I'd have fucking stormed into Haida long ago and made both of you famous. We're not even divorced yet and you bitch, can't wait to go running back to him. Do you really think Raymond, eat for free? Let me tell you, Claire, want a divorce? Dream on. Even if you die, you'll die in the Zhou family. The video was fuzzy and chaotic, Evan's figure didn't appear. The boarding announcement sounded, and I moved my eyes away, a little tired. Let's go. I'd been abroad for 2 years, and Luke had finally agreed to bring me home to see the country. To be honest, I knew nothing about it, all my memories had been taken away with that operation. So when we first landed in Haishur, I felt a little excited. Luke gripped my hand and warned me in advance, don't wander off, stay with me. Really, watching so closely. I had no choice but to obediently follow behind him and exit the airport with him. Luke had been away from the country for 10 years. As soon as he landed, his friends enthusiastically wanted to host a welcome party for him. Luke took my hand and led me into the hotel, where his friends were already waiting at the table. He sat down calmly, chatting with his friends while serving me dishes, carefully removing the fish bones. I buried my head and ate in silence, when suddenly I felt someone staring at me. I looked up and saw an unfamiliar face. The person stared at me in disbelief for a long while, then suddenly drew a sharp breath, and immediately lowered their head to take out a phone, doing something I couldn't see. Puzzled. Halfway through the drinks, the private room door suddenly slammed open with a bang. The newcomer's footsteps were unsteady, he scanned the room in a panic, and finally his gaze fixed on me. His eyes were complicated, there was surprise, guilt, sorrow. At last he croaked my name with a dry voice, Ashley. But I didn't know him. Luke rose and held me tight in his arms, furious. Who told him? I hadn't even asked anything when Luke hurriedly took me away. In the end I only had time to glance back at that man once. His features were sharply defined, his nose straight and broad, his appearance neat, yet he looked thin and terribly haggard. Back in the hotel room, I couldn't help asking Luke who that man was. Luke stroked my hair, his eyes distant. He's the person who used to make you very unhappy. I hope you won't remember him. Is that so? Then I'll listen to you. I relied on Luke so much. During the 2 years of recovering from surgery, he cared for me and stayed with me every single day. He patiently taught me the letters of the alphabet, took me through memory and cognitive exercises, supervised me taking my medicine on schedule every day, tending to me with the devotion one gives an unaware child. Without Luke. I quickly shook my head to dispel the thought. No, how could I be without Luke? As usual, Luke told me a bedtime story, and I fell asleep to the warmth of his voice. In a haze, I heard voices from the living room, his and someone else's. The other man said, Luke, have Evan see Ashley. Over the past 2 years he's gone completely mad. He sold his company, his house, even repurchased the place he used to share with Ashley and lives there now, shutting himself away from everyone. These past 2 years, at the slightest lead he's been flying off abroad, and every time he comes back he locks himself in that house for a month or 2 until there's word of Ashley again. I saw you showing up around Ashley, and only then did I understand why he can't find her no matter what he does. Luke, if he never sees Ashley again, Evan will really die in that house. This is, after all, a matter between them as husband and wife. Can't you give them a chance to resolve it? Spouses? Luke sneered. If I remember correctly, I already had my lawyer finalize the divorce papers with him. Ashley is mine now. The next morning when I woke, Luke was sitting at the side of my bed. He seemed lost in thought, his handsome face was full of discontent. I carefully reached out and gently hooked my little finger with his. Luke startled at my touch, he turned his head, looked at me, and smiled softly. Get up, Ashley. Luke had already squeezed out the toothpaste and prepared a towel. I finished washing up, bounced over, slipped quickly into the coat he held out, then hugged him and took a deep breath in his arms, sighing, "Luke, what would I do without you?" Luke drove me to the base of an apartment building in a residential complex. He patted my head, helped unbuckle my seatbelt, then looked at me with eyes full of reluctance. "Ashley, there's someone who's been looking for you. You used to like him very, very much. He wants to see you, he's waiting for you at the home you used to share. Ashley, go. If you see him and still want to come back to me, then don't hesitate, come straight back down. I'll be here waiting for you." I got out of the car and walked into the building. It was strange, no one had told me which floor the person was on, yet I pressed the floor button out of habit. When I knocked and the door opened, I saw the man who had barged into the dinner party last night. "Ashley," he cried, his emotions raw, tears glinting in his eyes. Unfortunately, I didn't seem to feel anything particularly stirred inside. He looked distraught, full of regret. "Ashley, I'm sorry, I only saw your notebook and realized how sick you already were back then. I saved so much money for you. I wanted to find you and take you to see a doctor, to cure you, but no matter how hard I looked I couldn't find you. Ashley, this is our old home, do you remember?" I stood in the living room and slowly looked around the house, then shook my head at the man. "Sorry, I don't remember." I smiled a little sheepishly. "Actually, it was Luke who asked me to come. He said someone I used to like wanted to see me. Now that you've seen me too, well, I should be going?" The man suddenly froze in place. The excitement on his face faded bit by bit, leaving him pale and lifeless. Seeing he didn't speak, I walked to the door, paused, then turned back to look at him seriously. Don't be sad. I think that if fate has already cut out the part of my life that belonged to you, it's probably because we cannot happily have each other in our separate lives. No matter how unhappy I was before, now I have a new system to begin a new life, so I hope you can wipe away those things about my past as well and start a new life. Well, goodbye then, Evan." The door closed gently. I couldn't wait to run downstairs. I didn't even catch Evan's last barely audible words, "Goodbye, Ashley." Downstairs, Luke was waiting for me. I dashed to him, laughing as I threw myself into his arms. "Luke, I'm here."